In our study on the Gospel of Matthew, we are now going to turn to chapter 5, verses 21 to 26. And in this reading, I'm going to read from the New King James Bible. You have heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment." But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without cause will be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, "Raca," will be in danger of the council. But whoever says, "You fool," will be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you're on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge hand you over to the officer, and you are thrown into prison. Assuredly, I say to you, you will by no means get out of there until you have paid the last penny. When you look at the Old Testament, there is traditionally a breakdown of three great streams. There's the law, the prophets, and the writings. The section that is called the writings, more or less, is a part of the Old Testament tradition that looks backwards to the culture from whence the people of Israel emerged. At the end of the 4th millennia BC, in an area that we call Mesopotamia. Now, Mesopotamia is just a compound word, means middle and river. So in the midst of the Tigris and Euphrates River, the Mesopotamian civilizations arose in the ancient world, about the 4th millennia BC, at the end of it. So say 3,000 years before the birth of Christ. This civilization was to dominate that world for better part of 2 millennia. And later on, you will have emerged the people of Israel. Now, the United Kingdom, Saul, David, Solomon, and then Rehoboam, is around the turn of the 1st millennia BC. In other words, just before 1000 BCE. So the height of Israel is at the end of a long period of cultural development in that part of the world. And one of the things that is bequeathed from the larger cultural whole to the people of Israel is what emerges in the writing section of the Old Testament, or what we can call the wisdom tradition. So if you look at books like Proverbs in the Old Testament or Job, you can find to a degree in the Psalms some of this, you have what is called the wisdom tradition. In simple terms, the ancient Near East and the wisdom tradition had a focus on a practical application of ideas. Now, this can be contrasted with the rise of, say, the great center of learning and culture that the Western world looks to, which is the city of Athens. Athens comes to its peak of greatness in the 5th century BCE, and then later through Alexander the Great towards the end of the 4th century BCE, and those that follow him, the dispersion of the Greek or Hellenic way of doing the world. And so the Greek emphasis found in Athens on rationalism or speculation spreads. And that comes largely, we could say, at the expense of the wisdom tradition in that part of the world. The wisdom tradition had not completely died out by the time of Jesus among the Jews. The wisdom tradition focused on the practical application of principles for good living. In these verses, we see the wisdom tradition coming through. What Jesus gives us here is not some new commandment. Jesus, in a way, in this passage shows how the wisdom tradition was made to fit into the theological and moral concerns of the people of the Old Testament. Yes, there is a commandment against murder. That's the law. This is clearly wrong. There is also the reality that people do not move on from holding grudges against people become miserable people. On one level, Jesus is working off of a simple truth. We do no good by being people who cannot forgive and move on. On another level, Jesus is recognizing that just because you do not do an act does not mean you would not do the act if there were not societal pressures against you that help to keep you in check. We have all met people who are moral and miserable to be with. The goal, Jesus says, is not to obey the rules, but to live in such a way that there is no desire to do such acts. Murder is the fruit of an inner life that is not submitted to his love and grace. I will not say that the wisdom tradition is the background for Jesus' approach to living, but I do say it is there. One of the marks of the thought in the Old Testament is its emphasis on pragmatism at the expense of speculation. Now, to illustrate how this has changed in the modern evangelical movement, think of so much speculation on eschatology or the end times is just that, speculation. It has no relevance for how you live as a Christian in the world you're in. It is about, will this happen? How this will happen? When this will happen? It is not about the call to be faithful, committed disciples here and now and live out the faith in the world that we are in. It is, in a sense, the ancient Greeks who bequeathed to us this spirit of speculation. Now, I'm not saying it is all wrong or of no value. The rise of modern science is definitely shaped and influenced by the Greek idea of speculation. The danger for the faith is that we put the emphasis on the speculative at the expense of the pragmatic. Jesus rooted and grounded theological belief in an approach to life that was fundamentally practical. It was never enough for Jesus to have people who simply believed. Belief must, through his grace, lead to a life that is transformed from the inside to the outside.